Well. Look who is back. It's been a year again. The next part probably doesn't take a year. It will continue Witch of a Holy Night now. I caught myself up with watching my own video, what happened last time. Aoko and Alice are planning to off Sojuro to get rid of him because he witnessed their magical rituals. And yeah, that's the gist of it. Let's continue. Let's go away from this awesome title screen.
Thank you. 落ち着いたわ、アリス。
Thanks, Alice. I'm good.
それと、気合も入った。
I'm ready to go.
全は急げ。あいつが言いふらす前に決着をつけよう。
Let's strike while the iron's hot and end this before he spreads any rumors. Pumped once more, Aoko turned her back to the school gate. For now, they would retire to the mansion and prepare for battle.
「いいけど、いつ、どこで彼を殺すの？
Sure, but when and where do you plan to kill him? He said quietly, so as not to be overheard by anyone else. Normally, Aoko had to rein in that side of Alice, out in the open as they were, but this was far from a normal situation.
今日の夜、場所はとっておきの夢の国よ。
Tonight, as for the place, we shall meet him in the land of dreams. She gave a fearless laugh. A strangely pleasant sound like the kind one would make when meeting their lover. Next episode. I already read into this episode a little because I didn't notice I was not recording, so just the first 2, 3, 5 lines or something. Anyway, next episode. Chapter 5, Night of the Witches 1. Sojiro returned to his apartment, on foot as per routine, under a blanket of clouds in the night sky. The rusty stairs of his apartment building clanged with each step. Out of the corner of his eye he could see the bicycles parked by the apartment building's outer wall. He debated the pros and cons of a bicycle, how much easier life would be versus the expense, the convenience versus the necessity, but in the end decided one was not right for him just now. Clutching the bag of apples under his arms, he took out the key to his residence.
あれば便利だけど、なくて。
A bike sure would be convenient, but it's not like... He tilted his head in confusion. More and more he found himself preoccupied with such random thoughts, when the real issue at hand was deciding what to do with the apples he had received. He placed the paper bag by the sink and switched on the lights. It was just after 10 in the evening. With the end of of term exams just around the corner, he had come home an hour earlier than usual. As he made back for the kitchen to pick one of the apples to snack on, he found an envelope stuffed in his mail slot. The envelope had no name, return address, or stamp. Inside was a single piece of paper that only the senders named and a short message. It read,
話があるので、今夜どこそこのここに来られたし、大事なようなので、来るまでずっと待っている。言うまでもなく、他言無用。
There's something we need to talk about tonight. It's important, so I'll be waiting. Needless to say, keep this a secret. A constant set of orders, neatly written. Concise, sorry. It was signed Aoko Aozaki. He had been considerate enough to enclose the detailed map on the meeting place. Puzzled, he cocked his head to the side, then headed out the door. Afterward, on the room's sole tenant leaving the premise, the envelope burst into flame and evaporated without a trace, as though it had never existed in the first place. By the late 80s, Japan's post-war economic boom had somewhat stabilized and the city experienced a period of steady growth. The city's modernization marched on, and the Japan Railways train station, a symbol of a new era, neared completion. In Miyazaki's neighboring town of Yashigori, a new symbol of its own was about to be born. Yashigori bred in Kitsi land. It was Miyazaki's worst investment. Years later it would be dubbed the fool's gold of an economic bubble, a relic of a bygone age.
この町には夢とか遮奪さが足りない。
This city lacks aspiration and sophistication. 10 years ago, Yashigori's renowned Tokitsuku banking company ran factories all across the nation. Its proprietor was a middle-aged gentleman, the age 56, by the name of Yuhiko Tokitsu, known affectionately by the mouth of Toppan. He took it upon himself to begin development on an estate on the outskirts of Yashigori and broke ground on a recreational wonderland that he hoped to be the pride of Miyazaki City. All these complicated names again, oh man. The long-awaited opening came in 1981. After 3 years of investment, this local amusement park full of all kids of kinds of hopes and dreams began its short-lived tenure. Covered more than 85 square acres. Its magnificent merry-go-round desert all passed through the park's gate. Its roller coasters twisted and turned about the edges of a park like a writhing Japanese dragon. Its Ferris wheel, packed bygone necessities with gimmicks, was said to have tested the limits of modern engineering.
完璧だ。遊園地に必要なものはすべて積み込んだ。
It's perfect, infused with everything an amusement park could ever need. Old Yukihiko looked upon his creation and smiled. Yurihiko. Only boosting his confidence was the fact that its grand opening was staged during a period of prosperity, the springtime of a world. But In spite of this, they splendidly miscalculated the balance between aspiration and sophistication. Its mascot, Kitsy, was poorly designed and apparently like a cheap knockoff. Appeared like a cheap knockoff. The park was stuffed to the brim with bread stands. Even its impossible to navigate mirror maze seemed out of date from the start. There are no dreams to be had in Kitsyland, only nightmarish satire. Numerous trade magazines lambasted Kitsyland's shortcomings, and customers' attendance declined. There was even an incident where a 60-year-old strayed from his mother. A 6-year-old, not a 60-year-old. A 6-year-old strayed from his mother had an accident and nearly died. 1986, 5 years after the park opened. The situation had grown from bad to worse, and the park was hemorrhaging money. On top of everything, Yurihiko who had bet everything on the success of mascot Kitsy, retired, and Kitsyland's operation were officially in trouble. And thus, amidst the scorn of nearly all residents of the area, ended Miyazaki City one and only amusement park. What's more, perhaps best described as a footnote in the debacle, the self-proclaimed Parisian artist who designed the mascot, Toki Ulich, was said to have snapped his brush in mourning over the closure of the park. Returning to the present. It was midnight, and the Kitsyland of today was a shadow of its former glory. Like a doll abandoned in the corner of a toy box, the lonely park was illuminated by the light of a town that continued to live around it.
なるほど。
So that's what happened. Sojuro closed the Yashigori guidebook that he had picked up on the way here. The story of its history was almost difficult to believe. What he supposed that this was what people refer to as entropy. The park's front gate was unlocked. When he worked here the previous time, the iron fences was locked shut with a rusty chain. But the chain was nowhere to be seen, and the gate left ajar. Following the map drawn in the letter, Sojuro quickly made its way inside.
急ぎのようなんだろうけど、こんな夜中に何なんだ一体。
It sounded urgent, but to meet this late at night? What in the world could she want? Sojuro complained, quite out of character for him. It was probably because, in spite of his naivety, even he knew that something was amiss. Though the park was abandoned, this was still trespassing. Unlawful entry, vagrancy, burglary. These were certainly not the things, or perhaps crimes, that Sojuro was proud to do. But
すまない。お金は払えないんだ。
sorry, I can't pay you any money.
ただで入って申し訳ない。
I'm really sorry for coming in for free. Money apparently was why his consciousness was gnawing at him. He clapped his hands in apology towards the statue of Kitsy, one whose eyes the paint had to begun to aptly dissolve. Sojuro passed the mascot's bleeding red paint from its eye sockets and began to walk the night park. Oh, the music. The building's color had faded. The collection of machines was rusted. The man-made residence no longer felt the passage of time. Even the ghosts themselves could not endure the disparity between this forsaken place and its previous grand statue. It was like a fossilized dream. These were the ruins of a paradise both created and abandoned by man and reality. The economy had stabilized, and the standard of living was on the rise. Nobody was overly concerned with the future. These were the remains of a wild and extinct era. His breath turning to white was before him, Sojuro continued through the abandoned amusement park. Void of human presence, this was not nearly as frightening as the darkness deep in the mountains. City's suburbs can take many different forms, but Kitsyland was unusual for an amusement park, in so much as it had been built adjacent to a residential district. The park was surrounded by a forest, but even that ultimately was man-made. It was no different from the curtains of a classroom window. If he were to scale the iron fence encircling Kitsyland and break through the 20 yards of forested trees, he could make it back to the familiar townscape. Through the amusement park tended an aroused dread in the city folk. To Sojuro it was a little different from the commotion and terror of downtown.
Areka.
That's it. The central plaza was as silent as a grave. According to the map, the meeting spot was west of here. Waiting for Sojuro at his destination was a rugged, imposing, magnificent castle, towering before the backdrop of a cloudy night sky. Even for an abandoned park, it was a remarkable structure. If a roller coaster and the Ferris wheel were loud, intense attractions, this was a comparatively quiet and easygoing. It was one of Kitsyland's 3 iconic structures, and in a way, the wicked fortress that guided this paradise down the path of closure. Generally speaking, amusement parks mazes generally fell into one of 2 categories. Labyrinths with disoriented visitors, their sheer size, and mirror houses, which disorient visitors with optical illusions. Many of the labyrinth's guests enjoyed the brief sense of adventure that it afforded. Over the years, however, it would be usurped by the ever-increasing thrills of new attractions, such as the way of old trends, the curse of fads. The new must give way to the newer. On the other hand, the House of Mirrors was a time-honored beloved staple. Even within the confines of a classroom's dimensions, well-placed mirrors and well-directed light could both perplex and delight its visitors. And figuring in the cost of maintenance, a well-designed house of mirrors could far outlive its labyrinth's brethren. Even if both types faded into obscurity, they would remain a staple of what constituted an amusement park. However, that didn't mean that combining them would produce double the fun. Together they transformed from entire entertainment into an uncanny realm from which those who dared to step within could never leave. In a similar sense, Itsy Mystery Tor Castle was the park's very own other world. Indeed, 5% of its visitors ended up requesting staff assistance to get out. Modeled after European castles, it was greater than a football field in length. Wow. And the interior was further split into 3 floors. 2 floors above ground and 1 below, lined with mirrors from top to bottom. Equal parts complex and vast, the maze demanded at least 30 minutes of even from veterans. One visit was all it took to be struck by a catastrophe for hours. It was this labyrinth that now stood in Sojuro's way.
真っ暗ってわけじゃないな。電気とかついてるんだろうか。
It looks to be like it's not entirely pitch black. I guess somebody turned on the lights. It seemed that Sojuro, unaware of what a house of mirrors even was, concerned himself only with its lighting. He checked the letter from Aoko once more. The letter read, "I will be waiting in the first floor lobby of a house of mirrors." That meeting place was definitely in here. There was something to see by at least, as the cloud just make out light faint through the open doors. As he could just make out light faintly throughout the open doors. Putting aside his suspicion, he headed towards the entrance. The sound of the steps against the brick-laid path echoed faintly. He was far from the hustle and bustle of the city. The park's clocks no longer made tick or nor tock, and the winter's bite no longer blew in the night. From within the silence, the stillness that would cause any onlooker to hold their breath. Hello? Sojuro stopped abruptly at the entrance of House of Mirrors.
ところで青崎、そんなところで何してるんだ？
By the way, why are you over there, Aozaki? Called out, turning back towards the plaza. The sound rang out as if someone had dove behind a garbage can and fell onto the ground in the haze. A short silence ensued. For a moment, the abandoned park returned to its previous hush. Resigned to having been exposed, the girl appeared from her hiding place. His voice died in his throat as he took in the sight of the girl's familiar face in unfamiliar attire. This Aoko, with her long hair flowing in the breeze, was different from the Aoko that Sojuro knew. The resolute stance and posture she took exuded the strength of her will. She stared directly at him with sharp-eyed, piercing gaze. Her eyes were glowing with a dim, phosphoric light, enough to give Sojuro pause that he might be hallucinating. An icy coldness and the girl's strength. Sojuro lacked the sense of danger, but the sense of imbalance caused even him to feel the malice in the air. It was a thought that Yuki Onna, spirit of folklore, had climbed out from a ghost story and appeared here in reality.
Aozaki?
Instinctively, Sojuro took a step back. Surprised, he was starting to feel concerned. An unpleasant premonition rose to the surface, brimming with a sense of anxiety. In spite of this, he felt obliged to honor urban etiquette by seeing if she was alright.
その顔を見るに何かあったのかと一応聞いておくんだけど。
Did something happen to you? From the looks of it, Without acknowledging him, Aoko took a step forward. Her figure, this atmosphere, Sojiro found himself recalling a recent memory. Its twisted and knotted apprehension melted away and was replaced with a growing realization. The girl before him was very similar to someone he had seen before, that night in the park, though he had only seen her from behind. With increasing certainty, causing him to swallow nervously, he noted that they might as well have been identical.
何をしていたかって話なら見ての通りよ。
You asked me what I was doing. Well, it's exactly what it looks like.
ここで獲物が通り過ぎるのを待ってたの。あなたが入ってから私も入って逃げ道をなくすつもりだったから。
I was waiting for my prey to pass by. Once you went inside, I was going to follow you and cut off your only route of escape. Aoko said, perturbed by the swift change in plans.
そうか、待ち合わせ場所は合ってたんだな。
So I came to the right place. Sojiro was mildly relieved. He had not got to the wrong place. It was unclear whether he felt confident about dealing with what was to come, or if he had simply failed to grasp the hopelessness of the situation. Aoko ignored his obtuse response and continued.
私はね、しずきくん。
You know, Shizuki,
嫌いな人とか憎い人とかは人並みにいるんだ。
just like anyone else, some people get on my nerves and some people I just really hate.
ただ、ちょっと変なのが敵になるやつの条件でね。
The funny thing is, my enemies are never people on my shit list. Cold emotion burned in her eyes. My feet had already moved one step closer to Sojiro. Sojiro's sense of foreboding was growing stronger, wondering if what he had sensed was bloodlust. He retreated another step. Continuing as though they maintained a distance of just 15 feet.
昔から私は嫌いな相手でも敵と思ったことはなかったの。
As far as I can recall, I've never thought of someone I didn't like as an enemy.
でも逆に好きな相手を敵だと思うこともあった。
As it happens, I've even had enemies that I liked.
理由は単純。
And the reason is simple. She held her right arm out. The light about her was no illusion.
当たり前のことだけど、
It's simple, really.
私は私の感情を乱すやつが敵なのよ。
Anyone who throws me out of whack is my enemy. The arm moved again. It was instantaneous. Something shot past Sojiro in the blink of an eye, missing him by just a foot to his left. Before his eyes, a blue light, something akin to a fireball, had ignited from nothing. He finally understood what was happening.
ちょっと待った、今のは大変見覚えがある。
Wait a second, I've seen one of those before. She ignored his dim-witted reaction.
外したか。
I missed Aoko muttered to herself. The first fist-sized hole the blue light had made in the house of mirrors crackled and smoldered. A shot like that could have easily caved in a human skull, in addition to burning it to a crisp.
ああ、こんな射程で外すなんて、アリスに見られたら自殺者ね。
I'd have to kill myself if Alice saw me miss that at this range.
でも、これで分かったでしょ？二度目だものね。あなたにとっては。
But you get it now, right? This is it for you. There won't be a second chance. Sojiro beckoned away swiftly. Things were beyond incomprehensible. He was close to losing the ability to think at all. All he could make out was a figure of a dependable student council president, or at least what he had thought was the president, and the memories of a park that night 2 days ago. He had never experienced anything like this. For most people living in a civilized country would have never seen anything like it either. A lethal weapon that could kill with nothing more than the pull of a finger, and a way of suspending the ability of its target to determine between not just good and evil, but dreams and reality, past and future. And the more peaceful someone's life had been, the stronger that suspension was likely to be. All that one could think about was the fact that they were alive at that very moment. It was if he was an unwitting character on a blank piece of white paper. There was no before, there was no after, there was only what came next. This was a very common thought process for anyone staring down the barrel of a gun.
あ、命乞いはやめてね。意味ないから。
Oh, don't bother begging, it's pointless.
でも、恨み事ならご自由に。殺す側の義務として一言一句聞いてあげる。
But feel free to air your grievances. It's a killer's duty to listen to her victim's last words. By saying it was pointless, she made it sound more like she would not listen to what he had to say. However, Sojiro was in such a state of shock that he did not even enter. That it didn't even enter his mind to speak up. All he knew, for a reason unknown, was that the girl in front of him wanted him dead.
嘘つきにも程がある。
You could have told me, Tobimaru.
飛び丸のバカ、何がそんな生き物はいないだ。実際いるじゃないか、こんなお化けみたいなのが。
You said that no such thing exists. Well, how about now, idiot? There's a monster right in front of me. Sojiro felt that if he had said that out loud, the second blast would come even quicker than the last, so he kept it to himself. His mental expletives stirred in his mind from paralysis to mere panic. This response came not from confidence, however. Someday, out of the blue, someone is going to kill me. While it may have seemed like a baseless belief to hold.
でもそうだった。都会には殺人事件がある。
Oh, but now that I think about it, murders happen all the time in cities.
ルールを破れば殺されるのは当たり前だって、ちゃんと教えてもらってた。
I should have remembered. If you break the rules, you get killed. I knew that already. To Sojiro, the situation seemed to perfectly align with his inexperienced understanding that the city was a totally pragmatic place. As far as he was concerned, at this moment, being killed by a classmate was not something to be surprised by. It's a society where murder was possible. He was able to accept this sort of situation as natural. Of virtuality, no concern was the series of events that led to Aoko's aggression towards him. The only thing that truly confused him was Aoko's blue fireball. Sojuro swallowed an audible gulp. For anyone who may have been watching, it was the response of a victim paralyzed by fear.
そういうことよ。ようやく理解してくれたわね。
That's right, so you do finally get it.
多くは語らないけど、あなたにはここで死んでもらう。
I'm all out of words, so I think it's time you died.
魔術は隠匿するもの。なんて言っても、そっちには関係のないことだし。単に運がなかったって思えばいいわ。大事なのは、私があなたを殺したってことだけだから。
I could go on about Magecraft has to stay hidden, but that doesn't really have anything to do with you. All you need to know is that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that it was me who killed you. Done talking, Aoko once again lifted her right arm. There was a hum like a machine. Blue light began to revolve about her right arm beneath her sleeve. This was taking longer than the last time, leading Sojuro to believe that it was going to be much stronger than the attack. It was still scorching in the wall behind him. The realization caused his panic to heighten.
いやなんだ、つまり始末するとかしないとか、あの夜のお化けは青崎だったとか、都会は本当に込み入ってるとか、そういうことじゃなくて。
No, but this is about me having to die. Or the fact that the monster that night was actually Aozaki, or even whether she's in part of a church. It's not about any of that. His thoughts became jumbled. His heart pounded like a hammer. This was no time to be standing still. He was not sure if the girl in front of him was really human. And more importantly, even if he could accept the events unfolding before him, when all was said and done.
待て、人殺しはいけないんだぞ。
Wait, it's wrong to kill people? Even if it was a fact of life in the city, Sojuro was not about to lie down and die.
分かってるわよ、そんなことは。
Don't you think I know that? Hey, wait! Sojuro's scream, still entirely oblivious, was just the thing to invoke Aoko's full wrath. Aoko fired a barrage of magical blue bullets. In an instant, Sojuro dashed into the shadows behind him, into the entrance of a house of mirrors. Well, what the heck was that? He darted feverishly down the hall. After a few feet, he was left completely out of breath. This was due to the shock at seeing yet another attack, fiercer than the first, that he had never seen in his life, and because he couldn't shake the thought that if he had moved even a second later he would be dead. He could not afford to stop. The sound of merciless footsteps closed in behind him.
けど助かった。ここならなんとか。
I've bought myself some time. Maybe here I'll maybe here I will be able to figure out something. He threw everything into his legs as he sprinted. A straight, narrow passage about 60 feet long connected the entrance to the main lobby. At this rate, if he could just make it into the lobby, he was sure he would be able to find as many hiding spots as he needed.
助かった。
Thank God. He arrived at a large open space. This was the first floor lobby. There were 3 passageways. One led to the basement floor. One connected to the first floor maze. The other was a set of stairs leading to the second floor. Sojuro did not particularly care which one he chose, so trusting his intuition he made a run for the first floor maze when. He smacked his head into its transparent wall.
鏡
Mirror?
ええ、面倒だけどそれならフェアでしょ。
That's right. It's annoying, but I guess this makes things fair.
追いかける方にも逃げる方にも有利不利がある。
The chaser and the chased are on equal ground. As somehow Shifu's voice echoed in his direction. There was no need for Sojuro to even turn around. In the very same mirror he had crashed into, he could see Aoko Aozaki's figure slowly approaching.
それと1階の奥にある出口は封鎖しといたから。結界じゃなくて物理的に。
You should know I sealed off the first floor exit deeper inside. Physically, not with a bounded field.
やりすぎて封鎖っていうより瓦礫？土砂崩れ？どっちでもいっか。とにかく下手に出口に近づくと崩落に巻き込まれるから。生き埋めが嫌なら近寄らないことね。
Is calling it a seal going too far? Maybe plugged or buried works. Either way, if you get too close, you will be swallowed by a cave-in. I recommend keeping your distance if you don't want to be buried alive. Panicked by the impending footsteps, Sojuro groped for a wall. He could see the stairs in the second floor to the second floor. He did not understand what Aoko had meant earlier, but he at least knew that the first floor was not going to save him.
ま、私としてはそっちのが助かるけど。
It would save me a lot of trouble if you just died that way, though.
形式上、事故死の方が後始末とか楽だから。
Cleanup is much easier for accidental deaths. Behind him was a creature beyond words. As he continued idle taunting, she lifted her right arm, ostentatiously. Even from above her clothes, one could see some kind of strange, incongruous pattern upon her body. The veins beneath her skin. They made it seem as though something inhuman was circulating her body. Whenever out of pity or out of repulsion, Sojuro stood for just a moment. His pressure evaded his gaze. Pursuer evaded his gaze.
ああ、これ？普段は塗り薬で隠しているんだけど、今日は特別。
You've noticed then? I normally hide it with ointment, but today is special.
魔術刻印って言ってね。魔術師の証みたいなものよ。
It's called a magic crest. It's proof that I am a mage.
ほら、光が回ってるでしょ？これがさっきのスナップ。わかりやすく言うと弾丸の元。
You see this light revolving around me, right? It's the beginning of what formed that snap. Those bullets.
今日は調子いいし、私、魔力を効率よく使うのだけは自信あるし。うん、あと30回ぐらいかな。さっきみたいな装着ができるのは。
I'm feeling pretty good today, and I've never felt more confident in how to use my magical energy efficiently. I think I'm good for another 30 bullets or so. Perhaps she was on an emotional high. For her voice had become frightfully friendly. The substance of her conversation could not have been any more unsettling, however.
そもそも何を言っているかよくわからないんだけど、青崎。
I don't understand a thing you're saying, Aozaki.
わからない？弾数はあと30発ってこと。
You don't? I'm telling you that I have 30 more shots in the tank.
そこまで逃げ切ればあなたの勝ちよ。とりあえず、今日のところはね。
If you can escape before I use him up, it's human. For today, that is.
今日はって明日もあるのかな。
For today? You mean I have to do this tomorrow too? Oh my god, what an airhead. Sojuru knit his eyebrows. Aoko's expression creased into a scowl at his behavior. Although he was panicking, it seemed that deep down he still did not feel the full weight of his crisis. She knew he still didn't get it.
宣言はしたわ。自由時間はこれでおしまい。
I said my piece. Free time is over.
まだ罵り足りないだろうけど、その手の時間はキリがないしね。この辺りで諦めて。
I may still have some trash talk left in me, but, well, there's never enough time to get it all off my chest anyway. Just give up already. It appeared Aoko had prepared this theatrical dialogue ahead of time. Not to all her opponent time for futile pleading, but to give him the time to curse her, his killer. Such for rightness was her modus operandi. What? With this victim, however, it was not going as she hoped to.
とにかくそういうことだから。
Anyway, that's all I have to say.
じゃ、狩りの時間と行きましょうか。
Shall we begin the hunt? Her voice was void of emotion, and her eyes ruthless as they before bored into her prey. This time, Sojiro finally accepted that that he was going to die. Silence. Silent as the dead. It stepped into the remnants of a dream that had long seen no visitors. There was no wind this night, nor a soul to be seen. Still, it heard the echoes from within, clasped its hands together, and grinned. Its form, with hands clasped, resembled that of a budding tulip. The bearing of this artificial flower reflected in the cloudy mirror of a ticket attendance office next to the gate. Next to it stood a display board, corroded by years upon years of rust. No visitors today. Numbers of visitors today, too. Numbers of today, what? Board had graffiti rudely scrawled atop one of the words. It was replaced with deaths. The records board had long ago fallen into disrepair. After taking a full 10 seconds to digest what it was looking at, it made its own revision. Numbers of visitors today, 3. Numbers of deaths today, 1. Also, another person entered the park. Yeah. Let's see it in the reflection here. Of a blue light. After appending this number with an index finger, she smiled like a flower. Then she began to walk towards the source of the sound. It had been 10 minutes since this rhapsody had begun to echo from the House of Mirrors. The amusement park's entrance returned to as it was before, soulless. the end. Even if Sojuro had been the luckiest man alive, there was no way he should have been able to escape. The question, however, was how much of this was by design, and how much was sheer coincidence. Even Aoko, who had made all the arrangements, had no answer. Indeed, there were only 3 things she could say. It was taking longer than expected. He was putting up more resistance than she had anticipated, and that choosing of the House of Mirrors had been a mistake. She really screwed the pooch on this one. The location itself was an excellent choice, as the House of Mirrors was perfect as a hunting ground, but seeing her own incompetence reflected in the mirrors was beginning to grate on her. The moment Aoko's right arms began to glow, Sojuro made a beeline for the staircase in front of him, throwing a series of blue flashes in the room behind him, lit the room behind him. The hunter calmly followed her prey, and the prey desperately ran for his life up the stairs.
注文通り。
Just what the doctor ordered.
そうでなくっちゃお膳立てした甲斐がない。
We can't very well let the best laid plans go to waste, now can we? In stark contrast to Tsuru's frenzied escape, Aoko walked briskly up the stairs. She elected not to run after her prey in order to maintain a set distance. She lacked confidence in her accuracy. She would be the most challenged if Sojuro bull-rushed her and went down fighting. But at the distance of 30 or so feet, he posed no threat. By the time the prey drew near, she could fire 10 shots and hit him with at least 4 of them. Their positioning just a moment ago hadn't been ideal. At this distance, in a space this open, there was a chance, however, small, that it could turn into a fistfight if he flanked her and charged her. Currently, Aoko's best weapon was the bullets from her right arm. If she was going to capitalize on that advantage, it was in her best interest not to close the gap between them. If there was a good time to approach, it was only after her prey had become exhausted and lost its will to continue. Would she pierce his leg? Shoot him in the back? Or perhaps he would just give up after losing himself in the labyrinth. The hunt would end when her target sustained some sort of injury and became unable to run. On Sojuro's end, he could barely bite back on screaming as he bolted through the maze. Even running in a straight line had become difficult, much less searching for an exit. The corridor stretched out far before him, or so the mirrors blocking the path had made it seem. Panicked, he made a turn to the right. Fettered. Clutching his head in his right arm, Sojuro led with his left, groping through the air to see whether a wall was there or not. He dove down the hall to the left, narrowly dodging the bullets targeting his life. Urged by the sound of approaching footsteps, he ran without thinking. The last one was close. A hair closer would have meant his life. He caught the odor of burnt hair from the back of his neck. He was very lucky. Or perhaps very unlucky. If he were actually lucky, he would not be in this situation in the first place. The second floor of the House of Mirrors was structured like a giant spiral. It would left starting from the outside wall. Eventually it would lead to a dead end. The more he tried to escape, the more cornered he would become. As though he were trapped in a twisting guillotine. The stifled scream threatened to leak out as complaints. No matter what he did, he was going to be killed. All of his struggling merely served to prolong the inevitable. Yet he ran. No matter how many mirrored walls he ran himself into, he ran. Even after crashing so hard that his forehead bled and he saw stars, he ran. Pain shot through him at every turn. The more frantically he ran, the more intensely he smashed into the invisible walls. His body began to understand this rule and begged him to not to run anymore. His breath was already ragged after sprinting a couple of 100 feet. No matter how he thought about it, this was not normal. This was way too crazy. This was all just a bad joke. If he turned around now, she would apologize to him for taking it too far. His mind had gone blank. As his body continued to slam into the mirrors again and again, his feet slowed as they began to believe that perhaps it really was all a joke. But then he felt a chill. A touch of death upon his neck. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Sojuro knew this kind of terrible chill far too well. Ever since he had arrived in the city, he had come face to face with more than one or two near-death experiences. As someone who did not understand city life, his present predicament was not unlike when he experienced the traffic of the streets or the commute rush of a station platform. He was far from an innocent babe unable to comprehend life or fear. Rather, everything he had ever known became irrelevant when he was flung into a completely different cultural sphere. Even society's promises of safety, something urban took for granted, were threats unknown. So he was used to this already. Well, if he were to be honest, he was dissatisfied with some things. Things surplus to necessity. This world was overflowing with values, things, and they were all dangerous in some way. Even the everyday necessities sold at the convenience store were, as far as he was concerned, amazing tools. Civilization was raised to the standard of living so high that it had numbed humanity's sense of danger. The city's constant pursuit of wealth and convenience was a poison to the country boy like Sojuro. And he did not have the capacity to accept these conveniences. But it was possible for such an convenience to easily and suddenly be misused and cause unintended accidents that always made him anxious. Why? He had to wonder why he was even here. How ironic. It took the real threat of death to finally make him realize, like a divine revelation, what he'd failed to understand until now. He'd always had to expect the unexpected. Near-death experiences were more common than one might think. To begin with, safety was something that came at a price. Being alive meant that the opposite was always lurking around the corner. It was just like a streetlight at night. When the sun rose, its illumination would naturally disappear. Another barrage of strange projectiles whizzed mercilessly by him. He recalled in the back of his mind the charred remains of someone at the hands of a blue flame 2 nights prior. Somehow this situation reminded him of a horse being led by a dangling parrot. But now he lifted his head and continued to run through the labyrinth. But for what purpose? Though he knew the pain in his chest was very real, he felt disconnected from it. The night sky, visible through the skylight, was a muddy ultramarine, no longer resembling the one he knew. He managed to calm himself. Tajuru began to laugh in despair, as though something rather precious had been broken. Everything had become meaningless anyway. Even so, his legs somehow made their way forward, at the sight of a reflection in the mirror. Like a game of cat and mouse, Tajuru fled through the labyrinth of mirrors. When after 4 minutes, that strangely unreal tension ended. A knife shot of blue lights hit inches away from him. It exploded the moment it made impact, launching Sojuru into the opposite wall. Of all the fire he had taken thus far, this shot indisputably brought him the closest to death. Groaning, he collapsed to the floor. His back was on fire with pain. He was not bleeding and was lucky he could still even scream. Yet his body refused to move. Physically and mentally, he still had something to spare. The pain was not so bad that he couldn't get back up. It was just that there was a skylight above him, and he could glimpse the dark of a night sky beyond. The feeling that overcame him was a raw, selfish bout of grief. Oh, it was just so cruel to have to stare that from the remainder of whatever short life he had left. Sojuru's ragged breath slowed. For all intents and purpose, he had given up. He had given up fleeing from the pursuing footsteps, and perhaps even the root of all his problems.
まあ、青崎に殺されるならいいかな。
Well, at least it was Aozaki who got to kill me. Sojuru Suzuki felt things that in any other circumstance he would never feel. Incidentally, without exaggeration of embellishment, this was the only mistake he had ever made in his entire life. Staring vacantly into the night sky above, Sojuru listened as the footsteps drew near.
Give up?
You give up? It was the closest her voice had ever been to him. Perhaps feeling that he really had given up, she approached his collapsed form. In the dark mirror-lined corridor, he could not make out her expression. Without a word, Sojuro raised his eyes to meet his murderer.
返事がないならそれでいいけど。
I suppose if you don't care, you don't have to ask.
調子狂うわ。 普通どうして殺そうとするのかぐらい聞くものじゃない？
You really throw me off. Most people would ask me why I'm going to kill him right about now. Aoko spoke from within the shadow. His eyes widened in bewilderment. Now that she had mentioned it, he realized that would have been the obvious question to ask. He had more or less picked up on the fact that he was being killed for learning some secret. But it was human nature to want to know more.
そっか。それは、そうなるな。
That makes sense now that you mention it. A simple affirmation. His face was a mixture of resignation and forlorn longing. He thought for a moment before.
でも言う必要はない。
But you don't have to say anything.
聞きたくないんだ。そう
I
いうの
don't
は。
want to hear it. He responded in a mature, subdued voice. His response was clear, rather gallantly so.
そう。
I see.
じゃ、殺すけど。死ぬの怖くないの？
I'm still going to kill you. Aren't you scared of dying?
怖いに決まってる。何より痛そうだ。
Of course I'm scared. It would probably hurt. His face turned awry as he objected, which Aoko frowned. As nonchalant as he could be, he was honest about his feelings.
そりゃ怖いでしょ。私だって怖いと思うし。
Of course that would be scary. I'd be scared too, you know.
でも悪いわね。我慢して。
Sorry though, you just need to deal with it.
人でなしと罵ってくれて結構よ。今の私は本当にその通りだから。
It's okay if you call me a monster. That's exactly what I am right now.
そういった意味じゃあんたと同じ。普通の道徳がないのよ。だから必要なら人も殺せる。
I guess in that way I'm just like you. I don't have what you would call normal morals. Helps when I need to murder someone. So Drew's finger twitched in response to her indifferent tone, as if to say that despite having given up on just about everything, his body could not let those words slide.
人殺しなんて良くないぞ。
Murder is wrong, you know.
分かってるって言ってるでしょ。
We went through this. I know that already. Aoko raised her right hand. The light from the crest illuminated her face. It goes without saying that her expression was unchanged. She was not crying, nor was she smiling. She was a young woman who had exercised her feelings. Deal with it was another thing Sojuro could not let slide. Sojuro could read on Aoko's face that she was not herself. She was in pain, and a degree he had never seen he had never seen in her.
すまない。ちょっといいかな。
Sorry, but I guess I do have something to say.
何？ここまで悲壮感を盛り上げておいて、やっぱり逃げるなんてのは却下よ。
What is it? But don't think you can trick me into letting you go by making me feel bad. He unconsciously smiled at Aoko's ruthless encounter and breathed a sigh of relief. He had misread the pain he saw in her face. This was the same Aoko. So Drew laughed out loud in genuine joy. A laugh that most other people would have taken as an insult.
遺言でも聞いてあげようと思った私が甘かった。
I'm starting to regret letting you say your piece.
っていうか、今の小バカにした笑いがあんたの遺言ってことで OK？
Should I take that attempt to make fun of me as just that?
いや、そうじゃなくて、あそこにいる人は青崎の友人なのか？
No, I'm not laughing at you. I was just wondering if that person over there was a friend of yours, Aozaki. Out of nowhere, Sojuro pointed behind Aoko.
はあ？
What? Aoko thought that it must have been that old overused distraction technique. If this had been a Japanese comedy act, this would be the part where she gave him a whack with a paper fan. But after giving a second thought, she realized Sojuro didn't have the capacity for understanding older or even new tricks.
あんた何言って。
What are you? Perhaps his honest disposition had been to his benefit. Without thinking, Aoko gave in to her curiosity and turned her gaze towards the direction in which his finger was pointed. And there. That looks uncanny. Something that should not have been there in the maze. Something with a creaking wooden smile. It wasn't the ominous, creepy, uncanny figure of a girl. A puppet? An unusual figure with 2 arms and 2 legs stood silently in the darkness. If only for a moment, its beauty, which was even apparent from afar, dulled the insanity of the current situation. Extend. Utterly unknown threat made Aoko freeze on the spot. Avoiding it didn't even occur to her. Humans possess intelligence and knowledge, but when confronted with the unknown, they fail to process what to do and... A shriek escaped Aoko's mouth. A magical attack crossed the 30-foot gap in an instant. The arm of a girl who had appeared as appeared at the rear of the corridor was slender and quick. It extended to a near impossible length, striking Aoko from behind. Aoko crashed into the wall as she fought back an anguished whimper. The attacker retracted the arm.
Aozaki!
Sojuro sprang to his feet. He darted to her side and used all the strength he could muster to get her onto her feet. He could not believe how light she was. In Sojuro's mind, Aoko was an extraordinary individual. He expected that if he were to ever touch her, it would be apparent that she was far stronger than he. But in reality, she felt about as heavy as you would expect a 100-pound girl to feel. Meanwhile, that thing continued to reel in its arm, as if it were some sort of mechanism. Having extended more than 30 feet from their elbow joint, it clanged as it returned to its previous shape and size. Are you okay?
やめてよ。わからないわ。なんでそんな顔できるの？
Are you for real? How can you even look at me like that right now? Aoko tore her hand away from Sojuro's. Suddenly she felt her knee buckle from under her, but Sojuro caught her before she could hit the ground and helped her to her feet.
無理するな。で、あいつは知り合いか？
Don't push yourself too hard. So you don't know this thing? He looked back to the eerie shadow 30 feet away, as it finished retracting its arm.
そうね。似たようなやつとは命をせめぎ合った仲よ。
Yeah, I fought one of its friends a while back. Aoko grabbed her lower back as she answered. A searing pain shot through her.
でも痛いっちゃ痛いけど打撲だけ。
It's just a bruise. How can it hurt this much?
あれだけ絶好の奇襲をしておいて、それともこの距離じゃ当たっても致命傷にならない。
Could have killed me catching me off guard like that. Maybe it can't kill from that distance.
なんてあるわけないか。何か別の意味があると見るべきね。
No, that can't be it. I must be missing something. Aoko tried to steady her breathing as she assessed the damage done to her back. The pain was quick to fade and her breathing returned to normal. For the time being, her motor functions were no longer hindered, which meant the real damage was elsewhere.
青崎、あれ
Aozaki, you're...
分かってるわ。黙ってて。
I know. Just shut up already. Blue light glowed across the gloom. The magic energy generated by her breathing was accumulating in her right arm. If magic energy was the fuel, the formula was the igniter. For Aoko, this was little more than a reenactment of 2 evenings ago. Next time the puppet extended its arm, Aoko would fire a magic bullet as fast as she could. The battle at approximately 30 feet. As long as Aoko could secure 2-second window, she could create a counterattack to end their duel. It made its move. With its hands tilted down, there was no expression to be seen, and in the darkness it appeared at apparent age was impossible to make out. To the 2 humans, the puppet was not dissimilar to a faceless ghost. Am I tripping, or does the puppet have the same hair as Aoko? Its left arm slowly came up with a grinding sound. Its movements were dull, as if the joints were rusty. The right arm, which had been extended earlier, hung at its side. Though the puppet's mouth was hidden by the long locks, the sense was that it was smiling.
さっきと用途が違う。あれが本命。
Changing it up. It's attacking from the left.
しずきくん、どいて。
Move it, Suzuki. She threw herself into Sojuro and extended her hand. Its arm extended at that very moment. The timing was impeccable. In a single second, Aoko's snap bullet scorched a direct hit on the puppet's arm, throwing off its trajectory and sending it crashing into the puppet's body with a violent explosion. Or at least that what would have been happened had the magical formula been evoked. She barely avoided being struck again. When her magecraft failed, her intuition took over, and she just managed to get away.
やられた。最初のはそういうことか。
She got me. She knew what I was going to do. She clenched her teeth in frustration, her thoughts racing a mile a minute. Fight or flight? It only had one arm left, which would take time to retract. This was the best shot Aoko had at defeating it. If she could evade the right arm just a fraction, she could get close enough to...
Vivo instom, solitare puturisque inferis.
What?
Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies. Teobeam.
What language is that? It's in slumber I live, in dirt I rot, alone. Today is the day I died and was born. I came to you. A crackle echo through the corridor. The poetic murmurs contained enough magical energy for a mage to perceive. The verse itself was Latin, but it contained hints of a language of curses, Gander. Originally there were words meant to curse a hated adversary. However,
Mer animae mortalis, otem efterra negata sunt. Manes sum, animam definire ambiguum est. Teode et am, conveniamus insomnio ipso.
my life is immortal. For through my future, though my future was destroyed, I am a ghost. The definition of life is ethereal. I hate you. I love you. Let us meet in a dream. The puppet was directing its word at itself. Curses began jagged curses. The victim calls down a curse on the assailant, creating a vicious cycle of negativity. The incantation was meant to do just that. However, this was ultimately a one puppet show. An unprecedented source of power akin to auto-intoxication. As unbelievable as it seemed, the cycle of curses had been turned into an perpetual motion device.
何それ、レベル高すぎじゃない。
You've got to be kidding me. Isn't this overkill? Aoko abandoned the idea of digging her heels in. It was the time to flee with all due haste.
何してんの、あんたも来る。
What do you think you're doing? Come on! She grabbed Sujuru's hand and ran as fast as she could, deeper into the realm of mirrors. The crackling voice continued its murmuring behind them.
Proximi mich negligentes ferunt. Omnes nos peccantes fims. Et omnes nos edem fims. Omnes nos peccatores sums. Venit domum meum. Lut simile somnium. Et pulvere simile quotidianum. Corprebo.
My neighbors neglected me. Not an innocent among us. We are all sinners. We are all sinners. Welcome to my house. May we die a muddy death. From dust to dust. Gouge out my heart.
Te judico.
Death be upon you. Yay. Aoko fought against the pain in her back as she ran through the mirrored corridor. She dragged Sujuru by the hand.
青崎、傷は
Aozaki, are you okay?
別に背骨がしびれてる程度よ。内臓は平気だし、出血もないみたい。
My spine is numb, but it could be worse. My internal organs seem fine, and I don't think I'm bleeding internally. She cursed inwardly at how much of a mess she felt through, though. Unlike Sojuro, Aoko did not run into any transparent walls. Thanks to the superior sight, but rather preparation. Thanks not to superior sight, but rather preparation. She hammered the layout out of a building into her memory.
平気ってわかるのか
You're really okay? What can you tell?
そりゃ自分の体だもの。身体管理は基礎中の基礎よ。
Because it's my body. One of the first things a mage learns is how to keep track of your body. Aoko's matter-of-fact answer contrasted with Sojuru's nervous questioning. The corridor grew shorter with each and every left turn. At first they were able to advance in a straight line for about 100 feet at a time. But by now they were focused on to turn a corner every 50 feet or so.
あいつはあの夜の
Is that the one from the other night?
多分ね。同じタイプだと思う。貴重なオートマタを惜しげもなく使い捨てるなんて、よっぽどお金持ちなんだろうけど。
Probably the same pattern at least. Whoever is behind it must be pretty wealthy to be throwing a valuable automaton around like it's a toy. Tsujuro furrowed his eyebrows. He was grateful that she was answering his questions, but baffled by the strange words she was using.
青崎ストップ。もう随分走ったぞ。
Hold up, Aozaki. We've been running for a long time.
あいつは曲がり角一つ分向こうだ。少し休もう。
We're a good corner ahead of it. We can afford to rest a moment. His words suggested that he was still concerned about her injuries. Aoko shook her hand in irritation.
あの距離を狙ってくる相手に通路一つ分のリードは無意味よ。せめて二つ分に行くまで走るの。
Not enough against something with that kind of range. We need to keep running until we did 2 or 3 turns clear of at least. Tsujuro nodded. Within that matter settled, he asked,
なんで俺を連れて行ってるんだ？
Why didn't you leave me behind?
逃げられたくないからじゃない、バカ。
Why don't do you think so you couldn't get away, idiot? Answering curtly, Aoko glared at her naive prey. The two of them headed for the next corner. The legs began to slow as they rounded one more. Aoko rubbed her back as she tried to catch her breath. While Aoko had insisted that she was fine, it appeared to have been bravado. Even the usual clueless Sojuro felt the desperation they were in. He stood behind Aoko with his arm folded. While they had a moment, he tries to make sense of everything. First, Aoko had nearly killed him. Though he was saved at the last possible second, it was by a strange, stretchy woman Aoko had burned to ashes 2 nights prior. He could barely make it out at that night, but he considered it a her because it looked female. The woman's attacks wounded Aoko's back, forced her to flee. Aoko had taken Sojuro with her, claiming that the reason she did so was to prevent that her prey from escaping. In other words,
青崎はまだ諦めてないんだな。
you haven't given up, have you, Aozaki?
当たり前よ。あんなやつ、仮に2体と半分始末しても、あんた用の余力は残せるわ。
Of course not. Even if I had to face 2 of those things, I'd still have plenty left to take care of the likes of you. The tone was sharp, but even Sojuro could see that she was struggling to stay confident. The damage in her body was too much to afford her any optimism. Still, the fury in her eyes refused to accept her circumstances.
中がところどころショートしてる。あの右腕は回路を混戦させるジャミングってわけね。
My magic circuits are shorting out like crazy, which means that the right arm of hers must be jamming my spells. With a proper response, he would have been for her to tremble in fear. She did nothing but shake her fists in anger. Disruption of formulae was only supposed to work on absolute beginners. If it had been her roommate, the arm would have been repelled in the instant it hit her, and the attacker's circuits burned out, rather than her own. Attempting to establish a link to the magic circuits of another mage was like presenting your heart to a silver platter. On a silver platter. It would be of no use in a battle against a superior mage. And yet, her adversary had been designed to do just that. Coupled with attacks on areas of Miyazaki under Aoko's jurisdiction, whereas the last few weeks, it was a clear statement from the enemy, who had revealed itself as a fellow mage 2 days ago. In other words, the puppet saw Aoko as no threat at all.
敵ながら正確な判断だこと。
Played right into her hands, huh? While she was still angry, the whirlwind of emotions within her started to fade. Her face was that of a hunter far beyond her years.
なんか俺の時より真剣だな。
You seem to be more concerned about this thing than you were about hunting me.
まあね、あんたの時は遊びが入ってたし。
Well, naturally, it was only playing with you.
うん。
The Drew was not sure whether to be happy or sad at that.
わからないことだらけで何を聞いていいかわからないんだけど、一つだけいいか。
It's also confusing that I don't even know where to start, but can I ask you just one question? Ako didn't respond. Her eyes were focused on the darkness before them. The silence was heavy, and the darkness was like a noose closing in on them. But Sojuro continued in spite of her indifference.
青崎はあいつも殺すのか。
Are you going to kill her too, Aozaki? Stillness fell over them. It was as if the gloom was pulling them in. No response. Their breathing was the only sound echoing in the dim corridor. There stood Sojuro, forcing her to confront her sins, and the magician girl who continued to ignore him. They spent a few seconds seemingly frozen in time. Yes,
それがあなたのキーワードみたいね。
it's a sticking point for you, isn't it? Aoko whispered in a lifeless tone. Her sigh was tinged with both resignation and content.
何？
A sticky what?
独り言よ、忘れて。
Nothing, forget it.
それと、言っとくけど、あいつは人間じゃないわ。
But just so you know, that thing that's following us isn't human.
信じられないだろうけど、自分の意志で動く人形なの。この前のも、今のやつもね。
You might not believe this, but it's a puppet that can move of its own will, just like the one from the other night. Sojuro nodded as he processed the information. Not only did he not doubt her story, but he seems to have accepted it at face value.
なんか落ち着いてるわね、あなた。
You're awfully calm.
まさかもう何が何だかわからないからあまり考えないことにしてるだけだ。
No way, I've no idea what's going on, so I'm just trying not to think too hard about it.
ただ人形に関しては別にどうということはない。
The part about it being a puppet isn't too surprising to me though.
もしかして他でも自動人形を見たことあるとか？
What? Are you saying you have seen one before?
都会の人形ってああいうものじゃないのか？
What do you mean? Aren't all puppets in the city like that? She barely stopped herself from falling to her knees. Of course, how could she have forgotten? She was dealing with a bona fide natural-born moron. As a student who transferred from the isolation of the mountains like an endangered species, his utter lack of common sense rendered anything miraculous as mundane. If automobiles were moving hunks of metal, then moving puppets were nothing to write home about. Wait, that meant To him, the incident from the other night hadn't been extraordinary at all. He might have been even assumed it was an everyday occurrence in the city.
参った。いっぺん頭の中覗いてみたいっていうか、ほんと、ここまで来ると感心するわ。
I give up. You know, I'd really like to get a look inside your head someday. I honestly have no idea how you've made it this far in life.
調子が狂うのも当然だった。普通は私に襲われた時点でもっと違う反応をするはずなのに。
No wonder you're such a weirdo. Normally people wouldn't react to the way you did when I attacked you.
化け物とかお化けとかさ。でもあなたにとってはそういうこともあるで済まされてたわけなんだ。
I could have been a monster or a ghost, but for you it was just another new fact of life.
なんかバカみたいね、私。
I'm starting to feel like the real moron here. Her strained face returned to normal for a moment. It hit her. There had been another way to handle this without anyone getting hurt. But the damage had already been done. There were no do-overs in life, nor should there be. Her own mistaken assumptions had sent the situation spiraling out of control. But now that Tsujuro was involved, she had to make sure that her secret was safe from him, with him. Even if there had been another better option, that ship had sailed. Human relationships were ultimately driven by mutual misunderstandings. They were likely tapestries woven from mismatched intentions. Break time was over. There stood Aoko Azaki and Sojuro Suzuki. Their first ever idle conversation had come to an end. Not that they had a choice in the matter. It was a jarring murmuring from around the corner that cut it short.
Nemo nus meminit, vedroit extinct sest. Initio eraberamos dom revimus dolores sunt. Nemo adiuvat.
Nobody remembers my funeral. My mourners have long since perished. We were born wrong. Life is suffering. Somebody save me. The enemy was just around the corner, visible in the mirror, parallel to it.
悠長に話してる場合じゃないわね。とにかく今は距離を。
We don't have time for this. We need to keep our Huh? In contrast to Aoko's elegant blue, its light were a malicious red.
感動打ち。
Thunder shots. There was a momentary flash of light before she even extended her arm. But the instant she saw the enemy, the dormant feeling erupted once more.
さっきから邪魔なのよ。
Yeah, a real pain in the ass. She channeled all of her pent-up anger and shunted it into her right arm. The fog that filled the corridor was no magical weaving, but rather a barrier of raw energy. It was equivalent to setting ablaze 3 buckets of gasoline to create a wall of fire, in the hope it would stop an arrow in flight. If a puppet had attacked with its arm, it could have pierced such a wall easily, but because it had loosed curses with no definite form, the wall of energy repelled the attack. While it was a huge waste of magical energy, it was the only means Aoko had to protect herself at the very moment. Unfortunately, its protection was reversed for Aoko alone. Blue held his hands to his mouth. While the curses had been weakened to a point where Aoko could no longer feel it, It had plenty of effect on Sojuro, who was not a mage. As if it understood this fact, the puppet turned its gaze from Aoko to an uninitiated human behind her.
こいつは関係ないでしょ
This has nothing to do with him. Enraged, she swung her arm forward once again. The blue light formed a wall block to block the gunner for a scant few seconds. It was enough of an opening to exploit. Just as Aoko was forming the wall, the puppet pointed its right arm at the face and...
関係あるみたいだから逃げるぞ。
This apparently does have something to do with me. Time to run. Before the rocket of death could be fired, Sojuro scooped her up into his arms. How he mustered the strength to do what was a mystery, but he turned his back on the puppet and took off running. He was a nimble sprinter, resembling a deer leaping across obstacles. Sojuro rounded two more corners, ignored whatever complaints Aoko was making, and eventually stopped in the middle of the second floor. He sent her down.
よし、ここまで来れば少しは休めるな。
Alright, I bought us enough time to rest a bit. Sojuro's shoulders as he caught his breath, heaved as he caught his breath. As light as she was, running while carrying someone else would make anyone winded. She looked up at him in incomprehension.
こんな体力あったのになんで
You had all that much stamina all along. Then why? It made no sense to her. If she had the stamina to pick her up and run, surely he could have stood up and escaped when he had been downed earlier.
ああ、あの時は諦めてたから。
Oh, that time I had given up. His words were unfiltered as ever. Though right then, fighting for their lives, he lacked some of his usual absent-mindedness. Sorry.
諦めてたって
Pretty late.
Lost
I'm
it.
tired. But why?
さあ、忘れた、そんなことは。
Knows, I've forgotten already. Or he may have turned away because he regretted saying it out loud. His words spoke volumes. For some reason, it pained Aoko to seem like that.
それより青崎、唐突に気分が悪いんだが。
Also, Ozaki, I'm suddenly feeling really ill.
あの赤い光も、その...
Was it that red light?
ええ魔術の類よガンド打ちって言ってね北欧の呪詛の一つ魔術回路のある私には効かないけど抵抗のないあなたには効果てきめんみたいね
Yes, a form of magecraft they call Gandor shots. A curse which originated in Scandinavia. It had no effect on someone with magical circles like myself. But you are defensive against it.
なんだ、青崎には効かないのか。じゃあ、危ないのはあの腕だけだな。
I see, that doesn't work on you. Then that arm is the only thing that poses a threat. Aoko had no idea why he was relieved, but she gritted her teeth and fought down the urge to snap at him. There was no use in yelling at the time like this. Above all, she felt that if it would have been petty in the extent to voice her annoyance right now.
そうね注意するのは伸ばしてくる腕だけ大した相手じゃないわやっぱり
You're right. The extending arm is the only thing that I have to worry about. So it's not that, well, after all. It's time. This time it was not false bravado. Such an enemy would normally be a breeze for Aoko Aozaki. But her shameful negligence had led to the disruption of her magic circuits, making her even less formidable than her enemy. At this point, Aoko had no way of attacking. The only option left in her was to wait for it to expend all its magical energy. But its perpetual curse mechanism made it that a no-starter. This game out of tag would not end until one of them was dead. She realized that she was in the same position she had cornered Sojuro in earlier. She glanced at her right arm. She could not imagine how she had gotten into such a mess with her magical energy at more than half of its capacity. He said to be calmer for having enjoyed toying with Sojuro earlier.
呆れた。いるところにはいるものね、神様って。
Maybe there's a god after all. She grumbled under her breath as she shifted her focus. She had to the fuel for the fire, but not the igniter. And that killing machine would chase her until the end of time if it need be. What she should do next was blindingly clear. She had to get back to normal.
青崎、
ごめん、考え事してた。
Sorry, I was thinking.
確か。よし、合ってる。しずきくん、そこに横道あるのわかる？
Maybe that could... Okay. Suzuki, I've got it. You see that side passage over there?
Huh?
Aoko pointed, but he could see nothing but the walls of the corridor. For one thing, the floor had nothing but left turns, and Aoko was pointing to the right.
2階は中心まで行くと1階に降りる階段があるんだけど、それは私が壊したから使えないの。
At the center of the second floor is a stairway down to the first floor, which I destroyed earlier so you couldn't use it.
けど、ここの作りも意地が悪くてね。よく見れば、右に曲がる通路もあるのよ。上級者だけにわかる抜け道ってやつ。
But there's another path that leads to the right. Like this place is taunting you by design. It's a secret shortcut that only the hardcore fans know about.
あとは注意して探せば、1階の階段までショートカットできる。悪いけど、一人で行って。
If you search carefully, you'll find a way to the stairs down to the first floor. Now do as I say and go down without me. Aoko turned her back to Sojuro and started walking in the opposite direction of the escape route, and down the long corridor towards the puppet in pursuit.
あいつは無差別だから、ここで壊さないといけない。魔術師は魔術師同士で争うのはいいんだけど、みだりに一般人に手を出しちゃいけないって決まりがあるの。
That thing kills anything it sees, so I have to destroy it here and now. It's okay for two mages to fight each other, but dragging normal people in the conflict is strictly forbidden.
あいつの目的は私のわけだし、結果がどうあれ、すっきりするでしょ。
I'm the target, so this is the best outcome for everybody, don't you think? If Aoko won, the puppets would be destroyed. If Aoko lost, the objective would be completed. Its objective would complete, and it would shut down. Either way, them going their separate ways would mean Sojuro survived. This is what Aoko meant. Though she explained it as the events were happening to two totally different people.
運が良ければ入り口までたどり着けるわ。
If you're lucky enough, you will make it back to the gate in one piece.
それじゃあ、また明日ね。
So, see you tomorrow then. Even Sojuro could tell she was just trying to act tough. But she had already disappeared around the corner by the time he fought to stop her. Well then, mentally Aoko bemoaned the disaster she was in. The quality of the puppet was on a completely different level compared to the one from the park 2 days ago. An atomic incanting perpetual motion machine was a rarity in and of itself, but its puppet was also equipped for battle, with extending arms and gunner projector crystalline eyes. It was a first-class product that, if put on the market, would sell for hundreds of millions of yen. Although that was only when factoring in its value as an antique. For the puppets of combat, purpose of combat, it would have made more sense to mobilize a significantly less expensive familiar. View such a precious commodity as a tool for murder marked this puppet's master as a complete different breed of crazy from the enemies she had faced up until now.
Vivo insomn, solitare putresque inferis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies.
来たわね。
Here it comes. The sound of a crackling music box filled the air. The automata, animated by its own curse, approached. The corridor measured approximately 30 feet in length. Aoko lay in the wait around the corner, further down the hall, anticipating the puppet's appearance. This was not to buy Sojuro time to escape, far from it. Aoko had concluded that she could make a break for it. Under the current circumstances, she couldn't make a break for it. Even if she did try to escape, by some miracle, made it out of the House of Mirrors, that was as far as she would go. Outside with no cover, Aoko would quickly be overtaken by skewered from behind. As long as her magecraft was disabled, escape was impossible. Instead, she chose to force the enemy back. Her situation was not the most favorable, but neither was for puppets. Though this narrow hall gave Aoko no place to run, it in turn prevented the puppet from reaching full speed. It was a weak point of a machine. Automata of this era had a tendency to struggle with minute change in speed.
セット。
She flowed energy into her shortened circuits. Her blood flow and magic energy supply were unstable. It would be difficult to construct a formula in this state. All she could do was harden her right arm by imbuing it with as much energy she could. Doing so turned her arm into an improvised weapon like a hammer or bat. Assuming she could manage to get into close combat range, this was the best she could do. All she needed to know was a plan of attack. The question wasn't what weapon to use, but how to use the weapon she had. The simplest way would be to use the mirror's reflection to hide the rush or the puppets from its blind spot, except for one major problem. It did not have a sense of sight in the first place. The puppet's view from the world around it did not stem from visual feedback, but from mapping the topography of its surroundings. In theory, it was the same as its echolocation. The environment could be measured based on the emission in return on a fewer frequency sound waves. Those chants served as a sensor pulse. As far as the puppet was concerned, the mirrors were only better than transparent panes, making even the thought of an ambush laughable.
近づけば近づくほどよりリアルに察知される。本当は遠距離からの狙撃が最適なんだけど、ガンドを撃ってくるならフィンの一撃ぐらい隠してるわよね。
The closer it gets, the more it's able to sense me. I'd really rather fight it at a distraction, but if it's getting a shooting gunner, it's probably got at least a thin shot. puppet sleeve or two. Gunner was Scandinavian in origin, and considering its simplistic, highly versatility, it was most efficient at impairing teenagers' health by opposing pointing a finger. As in single-action magecraft, it was eliminated, only causing illness, but there was a secret technique said to be the greatest mastery of a gunner shot, a fin shot. It could do more than cause simple illness. It was a deadly curse that could stop the heart. The wounds on her back set her nerves on fire. An unarmed girl and a deadly automaton. It was clear that she was the one destined for death. She considered her slime changes for survival one. A vision sent chills down her spine. Quietly, using everything she could to clamp down on a feeling, Aoko faced her all too familiar illusion. She clenched her teeth to keep them from making deafening chatter. But the sensation of fingers crawling up her neck behind her, the spectre stared and laughed. This alone made Aoko want to bolt. On top of it all, when Aoko tried to mentally stimulate the coming fights, she estimated a 2 in 10 chance of dying in the first 5 seconds. 20%. At this time, her predictions were harsher than reality. If Aoko thought the puppet 10 minutes would die twice, she could not stop herself from visualizing her own corpse. She imagined herself collapsing, crumbling under the puppet's curse. Her eyeballs swollen like a blowfish, blood and other fluids oozing from every bodily orifice. 1 in 5, 1 in 5, 1 in 5. A 1 in 10 chance of death was bad enough. But 1 is 5? 1 in 5? It drove her crazy. Aoko forced down her heart as it tried to escape from her mouth. Taking a deep breath, she peered at her own reflection. She thought back to normal that white night half a year ago. This, she decided, was nothing compared to that. 6 months ago, Konji Estate. The haunt of white roses, the warden's snatch. It appeared from within the thicket. Fogg had killed Aoko. A murder times 100 times out of 10.
Mea animae brutalis, otem mea ftura necada sunt. Manes sum, animam definire ambiguum est.
A dark curse shattered Aoko's daydream. It was only 30 feet away. Dark curses shattered Aoko's daydream. Oh, sorry. The puppet rounded the corner. Either side stood in the shadow, the forms indistinct. The puppet gave no warning. Without frameable, it swiftly fired a Ganda barrage. Just as Aoko planned, the curses fizzled out as they hit a mist-like barrier of magical energy. The protection would only last a few seconds, giving her just enough time to...
Kai!
Its strengthened spear sprang towards Aoko's face.
Bingo!
Lethal weapon grazed her neck. All her experience analyzing puppets attack patterns gave her meanwhile to evade the attack by his breath. It was one thing if a puppeteer were pulling the strings, but automatons dolls have their limitations. Aoka had been everything this killing machine following predicament template, but puppets would use a given attack for a given range, and she would adjust her tacticians. Aoka had bet everything on this killing machine following a predefined template. The puppet would use a given attack for a given range, and she could adjust her tactic to that.
いける、このまま。
Now's my chance. Before its arm had the chance to fully retract, she charged the puppet. It was a risky gamble, but her overall chances were slim to begin with. The scales tipped in her favor. One was from a thin shot, fired at that range. And the other was if a puppet's attack patterns was beyond her ability to foresee. Instantaneous mass transfer, otherwise known as mass displacement. Immediately after Aoka dodged the puppet's arm, something smashed into her abdomen. The head-on collision from its shoulders felt like a rocket. But where had the ability to propel itself come from? It's like this were not built to have the ability to jet around like that. Doing everything in her power to stay conscious, in spite of the pain, Aoka could just make out what had happened.
今の推進力じゃなくて牽引力。
It wasn't propelled, it was pulled. Yes, the puppet's arm had not returned to its body. It was lodged in the wall and reeled itself in the form of the other direction.
そんなのありか。
It can do that? Swallowing her surprise, she hastily pulled herself back up. Her abdomen specifically, a diagram, had been dealt a significant blow. The attack felt the disoriented thankfully. The puppet was surprisingly lightweight. The bones and organs were intact, and she had sustained no life-threatening damage. She was having a hard time breathing, however. She was shaken through, though she managed to keep her calm. In another 2 seconds, she'd be back on her feet. Not that 2 seconds too long. She told herself to calm down, that she was already calm. She had only briefly lost her bearings, and she was fine. She could recover her breath and her vision later, if only her body would move.
Intellectus non necessarius est, iesque escat. Nostra sentiabulat fit. Ratio fix tantum est. Dolores nitium cerebrum fit.
Above her Aoka tear, a rap, odd noise of a powerful force.
足動け。でもどっちに行けば。
Come on, Lex, move. We've got to get to where? She could once more feel the touch of death.
Is salvatio, is salvatio, is salvatio.
Grant us salvation, grant us salvation, grant us salvation. The puppet was so close that Aoka could reach out and touch it. It also meant that it could reach out and kill Aoko.
こいつの右腕の死角に入れる。
I need to get my right arm in its blind spot. By intuition alone, Aoko rolled over to the puppet's right flank. Its arm was still embedded within the wall. From here, it could not attack. She had not had made the right decision, and her dizziness faded.
Intellectus non necessaris est, pius quiescat. Un nostra sentiabulat fit. Ratio fix tantum est. Dolores nitium creburum fit.
Cast of righteousness, lay pity to rest. We beasts are meant to consume each other. Life is about decoration. Throw away your intellect. Pain powers the mind. Aoko pulled herself back up. It was her turn. It was only an instant. Within this labyrinth of mirrors, she saw an image of herself.
Vi salvatio.
We die. So it's a voodoo doll or something? A blinding brilliant light flashed. Lacerations appeared across the walls. At the last moment, Aoko managed to thicken the magical energy running through her veins into a primitive form of magecraft resistance. It just barely saved her life from what must have been the puppet's ace in the hole. The puppets bore a striking resemblance to Aoko. This powerful curse was not satisfied with stopping Aoko's heart, but destroying her entire being. Aoko did not even have the time to be shocked. This was a chance for a counterattack. The puppet's balance was unsteady, its right arm still embedded in the wall. Aoko prepared to give its defenses its body a strong kick, but her knees buckled and she collapsed into the heap of floor.
Vevo in sum, solitare putresque inferis. Ictius meus obitius dies, et meus natibus dies, te obeam.
In slumber I live in dirt, I rot alone. Today is the day I died and was born. I come to you. Sudden nausea and lightheadedness overcame Aoko. Her body temperature began to rapidly lower.
こいつ呪いをばらまいてるんだった。
This whole time, it was spreading its curse the whole time. She noticed too late. The puppet's curse circled her of the hall. The curse chant that the purpose you used as a source of power doubled, as a defense mechanism crippling those who drew near with illness. She bore the full brunt of her the entire time she was in close proximity to it. Although Aoko had magic circuits, she was succumbing, just as Sojuro had. Languidly, she forced her deteriorating body to jump back.
負けるか。
I'm not done yet. With all the energy she could muster, she forced her way past the exhaustion caused by the curse. However, Aoko's blood pressure took a steep nosedive, not from the curse-induced amnesia, but from what happened in front of her. They stood in perfect harmony. In front of Aoko was the automaton that shared her face, its left arm held out like an arrow. The delayed weapon shot forward and honed in on her heart. A moment before it made contact.
危ない。
Watch out. The moment she heard that fearless voice, completely out of place in the storm of violence, Naoko's body was pulled forcefully to the side. Once again, the extending arm cut through the empty air. While the puppets quickly its left arm retracted its left arm, Sojuro took a brief opportunity to take Aoko by the hand and flee at full speed. Sojuro ran through the corridor as fast as he could, only stopping when he had put enough distance between them and the puppet.
考えてみると
I was thinking and... Boy had saved her. She looked angrier rather than grateful. This did not keep Sojuro from saying his piece.
明日はどうも忙しいみたいなんだ。
Tomorrow is going to be a really busy day for me, so... In other words, let's finish this today. A rather awkward proposal. Aoko remained silent. She was also rather angry. Not that she could not figure out what made him tick. Not because he returned after escaping. Not even because he was spouting his typically airheaded lines. It was, she supposed, that instant. The fact that he grabbed her hand. Her mind had gone completely blank. Aoko found it unforgivable. Which beckons the response.
あなた、正気？
Are you insane? In the heat of a moment, she blurted it before she could stop herself.
それとも自殺願望でもあったわけ？私もあいつも、あんたなんか殺す対象に過ぎないのよ。
Or maybe you got a death wish? Don't you realize that either of us could have killed you with a snap of a finger?
少なくとも、恩を売る相手じゃない。
At the very least, I don't owe you a damn thing.
言っとくけど、私、助けられたぐらいで曲がる信念は持ち合わせていないから。
Saving my life doesn't change a thing between us. Sojuro nodded, clearly unperturbed.
青崎がそんな可愛らしいもんじゃないのはこの夜だけで骨身に染みてるよ。
Don't worry, Aozaki. If tonight taught me anything, it's that you're more ruthless than that. He found herself slightly offended.
けど君は勘違いをしてるから少し正そう。
But I think you need to get one thing straight.
あいつの狙いは青崎だけじゃない。君だけじゃなく俺も殺す気だと思う。
That thing isn't just trying to kill you. I think it's trying to kill me as well. She was having none of it. Her eyes shot daggers in his way.
話は最後まで聞く。どうしてかっていうと、1階の入り口あるだろ？あの細長い通路。
And before you shoot me out, you need to know something. You remember the first floor entrance at the end of that long corridor?
なんでかあそこから先に進めないんだ。逃げたくても逃げ出せなくて、仕方なく戻ってきた。
Well, it's blocked. I tried my very best to find a way out, but no luck. There was no choice but to turn right back. Aoko's eyes widened ever so slightly in amazement. She felt admiration rather than shock. That her enemy would go to such lengths.
それに、さっきので完全に敵扱いされた。あの人形、こっちをじろっと睨んできたし。
And besides, it was hostile to me to me earlier too. I could tell by how it was glaring at me.
いや、一瞬でよく見えなかったけど、生きた心地しなかったな。青崎も気をつけた方がいい。多分よっぽど怖い顔をしているに違いないぞ、あれ。
Well, it happened so fast that I didn't really get too good look at it. But it was really unsettling. You should be careful. That thing, she sure has a terrifying face.
それはご親切にどうも。
Gee, thanks.
なんでこれはもう他人事じゃないんだ。
You bet. I mean, I can't pretend like this isn't happening to me.
青崎と人形。結論として、どっちが勝っても俺は殺されてしまうんじゃないか？
Whichever of you wins, I'm a dead man either way, right?
そうね。そこまでやってるなら、目撃者は消すでしょうね。私みたいに。
I can't argue with that. If it's willing to go as far as to steal off the entrance, then it'd probably kill any witness as well. At least that's what I have to.
だろ？でも、俺はあいつには殺されたくない。
Right, and I don't want her to be the one who kills me.
え？
Wait, what? His words were decisive. As Arko looked up at him, she could swear he was trying to encourage her. It was then that she realized. The juror was looking even worse than before.
ちょっと待って。大丈夫なの？あなた。
Hey, are you okay?
まあ、醤油を一升瓶飲むよりはマシではないかと。
Well, I'm better than if I'd drunk an entire bottle of soy sauce. He tried to make light of the situation, but his forehead was clearly drenched in sweat.
そうか。さっき人形に近づいたから。
Right, it's because he was close to the puppet just now. How could he possibly be able to withstand a curse that made even Arko nauseous? She bit her lip, annoyed herself with not noticing this earlier. The juror was an airhead, but she hadn't even paused to consider his plight.
下で隠れていようとか思わなかったの？その方がどう考えても安全でしょ？
Why didn't you consider trying to hide down in the basement? That would have been the safest bet, wouldn't it? She really could not understand him at all.
それは青崎が言うセリフじゃないな。
You should really take your own advice sometimes, Aozaki.
でもまあ、長話をしている時間もない。そろそろ追いついてくる頃だ。
But hey, this is not the time to be shitting. She could catch up at any moment. He turned to look down the corridor. The crackling sound of a music box could be heard creeping forth from the darkness.
さっき1階にいて考えたんだ。君がやられても俺は殺される。なら、まず奴をどうにかするべきだ。
I was thinking about this while there was only one first floor earlier. If it kills you, I'm next. That's why we should deal with it first.
あなた、何が言いたいの？
What are you getting at? She asked a question to which she could already knew the answer. She did it to put him through the rest. If he wavered even a little, she would have killed him where he stood.
提案。あいつをやっつけるのに協力したら、俺のことは見逃してくれる？
My proposal is, if I agree to help you kill that thing, will you let me go?
助けられたぐらいじゃ信念は曲げないって言ったでしょ？
I thought I made it clear that helping me wasn't going to change my mind.
それに、あなたに何ができるっていうの？
And besides, what do you think you're going to do to it anyway?
それは青崎が考えてくれ。得意だろ、そういうの。
Oh, that's the end of your bargain, Aozaki. It's your area of expertise, right? The commander who had the overall picture was responsible for delegating roles to their teammates. It was futile to depend on someone who was unable to grasp the situation or evaluate the enemy's strength. Sojuro was proud to share that he knew this. He spoke the truth. Aoko was the only one who knew both Sojuro and the automata. It was why he pointed out that following her orders to the best of his ability was the only thing he could do. It may have seemed as though Sojuro had surrendered his capacity for self-thought, but in accepting that he was helpless, he was in fact giving Aoko his complete trust.
じゃあ私の指示に 100% 従うってこと？
Fine then. So you do exactly what I tell you to do?
ああ、それにこれは恩とか義理の話じゃない。
I will. And just so you know, I'm not doing this out of sense of obligation or anything.
一人だと分が悪いから二人でかかるだけだ。善意でも好意でもない。取引って言わないか、こういうの。
It's just oblivious that neither of us had a chance on our group. Goodwill or kindness is a transaction. His eyes sparkled as if this was bartering at its truest form.
まったく。
Oh my god. This child must have learned that from Tobimaro in Aoko's thoughts. Though she refused to let him see it, she smiled anyway. Gotten the best of her just now, but there were times when defeat was not the worst outcome in the world.
労働と報酬ってわけね。それなら理にかなってる。
Honest. Pay for honest work. Makes sense.
うん。言いたくないけど。
And I hate to admit it, but she relaxed her shoulders and sighed. Her face crackled into a wicked grin, as if her fear had suddenly washed away.
それ、結構私の好みよ。
Your plan is just my style. Aoko repaid Sojuro's trust in equal measure. I'm getting pretty tired here, god damn.
結構きついかもね。
I am.
あなたの役目。
I wonder how long this chapter still is. Just so you know, this is going to be pretty tough for you. Aoko warned Sojuro, moving as fast as she could without her footfalls causing a din of noise. Sojuro remained near the center of a spiral maze on the second floor.
実を言うと、もう一つ用意しておいた仕掛けがあるの。
Let you in on a secret. I have another trap up my sleeve.
自分でもやりすぎだって呆れたもんだけど、あなたがここに来るのが遅かったから。ちょっと興に乗っちゃって。
I think I might have gone overboard with this one, but when you didn't show up in the morning, I couldn't help myself.
仕掛けって俺用の？
A trap for me? Sojuro tilted his head like a squirrel as Aoko freely discussed the final ace up her sleeve.
地下の柱に着火型のちょっとした魔術式を刻んでおいたの。中心の柱に点火することで連鎖的に他の柱に仕掛けた魔術も起動する。
I engraved an ignition formula into the support pillars in the basement. If I ignite the central pillar, it will start a chain reaction that will ignite the rest.
ジャミングを食らう前に作ったものだから、直接魔力を叩き込めば一気にこういくわ。
I made it before that thing started jamming me, so if I infuse it with a bit of magical energy, it'll go boom. Juro was a little unsettled by how unclear that last bit was.
青崎、こうじゃわからない。できるだけ明確に、どこまで爆破する気だったのか白状してくれ。
Ozaki, could you, clarify? I want to know how much we are going to blow up. Please be honest.
あと、もしかして俺、早まったか？
Also I made it a mistake agreeing to team up with you.
いや、単なる保険っていうか。
Don't be silly, it was just an insurance money.
追いかけっこの途中であんたを見失ったら、いっそ建物ごと爆破しちゃおうかなって。
I just thought if I lost sight of you at any point, I could blow the whole building and you with it. It was her policy to be thorough to a fault. After all, she laughed, embarrassed to herself. Say it out
い
loud.
くらなんでも徹底しすぎてる。
Don't you think that's overkill? Faced with Aoko's cruelty, Sojuro forgot about the situation at hand and protested from the bottom of his heart.
何よ、いいじゃない。そのおかげでなんとかなりそうなんだから。
Stop complaining, at least now we have a way to fight back. She shot back. Aoko dashed down in the corridor, mumbling things that probably would have sent Sojuro packing if he had earned them. Strategy was simple. Aoko would use the escape route into the right of her and avoid the puppet by making her way down to the basement. Upon reaching the central pillar, she would infuse the formula she had prepared with magical energy and escape. Once ignited, it would take about a minute before a chain reaction to spread throughout the whole house of mirrors, and another minute of the building to collapse. She would be cutting in a little cutting a little close. But because she had committed the maze or to memory, she was sure she could make it out in time. Aoko assumed that the chain reaction caused by the pillar would be the barrier that the puppet had placed at the time. And even if he was strong enough, withstanding the blast, it would not be easy to stand up once more. The foundation buckled. So Juru's escape was as assured as long as the formula in the basement was activated. Next came the most important part. Automaton was at a disadvantage in the obstacle landing house of mirrors and was able to join more. What am I reading? I'm way too tired. Automaton was at a disadvantage in the obstacle landed houses of mirrors and was unable to move at full speed. If it was near the center of the second floor when the building collapsed, it would be caught up and crushed by it. So the problem was keeping the puppet on the second floor until Aoko could make it down to the
当
basement.
てにしたからね、しずきくん。せめて3分ぐらいは引きつけて。
I'm counting on you, Suzuki. I just need you to keep it occupied for 3 months. Ideally, he would be able to keep it busy until she could activate her formula. If that failed to work, I'm luring it down the first floor would be next best thing. She understood perfectly well the danger. She was putting Sojuro but his lucky streak and running speed were nothing to scoff at anymore.
ただ逃げるだけなら、もしかしてとんでもないことをしてくれるかも、あいつ。
As long as all he has to do is run, then maybe, just maybe, he can actually pull this off. Made her way through the hidden passages of a maze, her hopes pinned on Sojuro. Meanwhile, well out of earshot, Sojuro was readying himself for another desperate chase. He calmed his breathing, using the method of its own making. What mattered most was that he remained calm. The plan was simple enough, and Aoko's orders were suspicious and easy to understand.
10メートルぐらいの距離を保って、できるだけゆっくり通路を3、4周すること。
A distance from around 30 feet and weave through the corridor as slowly as you can, 3 or 4 times.
横道は鏡のつなぎ目で覚えて。ここなら左回りで6、3、7、2枚目にあるから、そこをぐるぐる回ってれば比較的安全よ。
Count a mirror as you move to locate the hidden passages. From here, bear on the sticks. Third servant and second mirror counterattacks use force, and you should be relatively. It was essential looping marathon. As long as Sojuro kept just enough distance from the puppet's extended arm to allow her to track him, she could continue to chase him indefinitely. Simple though the task was, Sojuro was putting his life on the line as bait. And then there was the final order to run as fast as he could to the exit when the building became to sway.
結構じゃなくてかなりきついんじゃないかな、これは。
This is more than just a little though. He nervously stuck his head out from around the corner. He could hear the sound of a music box from the other side of the corridor. Could hear the sound of a music box from the other side of the corridor. First he had to make eye contact with it, then head through the shortcut on the right and begin the game of tag. Spotted it and braced himself. Closer, closer. Fearing that her arm could fly at the sound. At any moment, we went over Aoko's instructions in his head.
あれ
However, he could not quite remember which pain led to the first hiding passage. Third floor, first... What am I reading? The third, the sixth, the ninth? No, He was sure that was mistaken. He was confident that he had it memorized moments ago, but its nervous and gotten the best of him. And his head was now spinning. Then Sojiro realized that the sound of his purpose was beginning to grow distant, and at an incredible speed. What the hell? What's it doing now? The unusual silhouette of a puppet astonished him. Before it had taken the form of a beautiful girl, but now made a bizarre transformation and returned to the first floor to pursue her primary target.
いや、それは。
This isn't the plan. Tsururu was no longer sure what to do. Before he had even had time to mourn his failure, the puppet had vanished out of sight. Help, so let me go. Or so he had said, but now he could not follow though.
さて、自分はこれからどうしよ
So, what am I supposed to do now? Loney tilted his head in frustration. He spoke into the darkness as if Aoko would be there to answer him. Meanwhile downstairs, as soon as she arrived on the first floor, Aoko understood what had transpired above her. She did not even have to strain her ears to hear the puppet. Even during its heyday, this attraction had never made sounds like the one she had heard coming towards her now. It was a sound of despair, as if a horde of monstrous hedgehogs were scraping their way past a miner in her direction. Mirrors in her direction.
ドジ、3分どころか10秒持たないってどういうことよ。
That's 3 minutes? He couldn't even last 10 seconds. Rather than buying her time, Sojiro had instead stolen hers. He had one job, to run away. That was all. She cursed him under her breath.
複数の足音。ってことは、二足から多脚に切り替えたのね。
Multiple footsteps. So it switched from a bipedal to a multi-leg form? Echoes made it sound like dozens of feet were approaching. Aoko's mind conjured an image of a giant six-legged spider tearing its way down the corridor. It was little wonder that it was so much faster than before. Its perception of its surrounding through echolocation was a particular use in the dark. Compared to sight-dependent humans, this automaton was far better equipped to navigate its way through a labyrinth of mirrors. If it could not keep pace earlier, that had been because its bipedal mode made it less maneuverable. Now the stability provided by multiple legs gave a speed that far exceeded that one of a human.
どうする？
What now? What now? The thought spun out as she tried to come up with a plan B. But she knew for sure this was a pivotal moment. If she continued standing still, she had seconds left at most. Even in her current state, she knew she could easily neutralize the bounded field blocking the entrance without casting a spell. All she had to do was feed a little of her own energy into it. Aoko could sprint with all her might for a little more than 3 minutes. The puppet had far more stamina than she did. She could only come up with 3 options. The first was to escape through the exit in front of her. The second was to hide somewhere on the more complicated first floor. And the third was to run into the basement and He stuck like a rat in a trap.
なんだ、考えるまでもない。
Well, it's obvious enough. She made her decision with zero hesitation, moving her stiff legs against her determined strength. The economic storm was almost upon her. The oncoming storm, sorry. Her resolve firm, she turned and ran, descending into the darkness. No matter what, a final should be glorious. This would be the Mirror Castle's final scene. 2 humans and a puppet. A young sorceress ran towards the subterranean heart of the castle, while an automaton antique chased its prey into the depths of a demonic dungeon. A minute later, a faint blue charge would ripple through the castle. This was the main pillar in the deepest depths of the basement. Though not critical to the castle structure, the pillar was a visible symbol of it. The girls concentrated her magical energy into a first and thrust it at the pillar. This was a blow that would bring down the castle. She imagined the destruction as she threw the punch, and that scene blossomed into reality seconds later. It was simple ignition magecraft, meant to release the condensed magical energy engraved into the 4 pillars in the corners of the structure. Using electricity was a switch meant virtually instantaneous activation. It happened swiftly and elegantly. A hammer of destruction descended upon the castle of dreams that had stubbornly resisted its fate for 2 years. It was almost a joyous sound, and so the lifeless and abandoned castle of mirrors set the stage for its final and most spectacular performance. Aoko's magical energy became an electrical charge that activated the magecraft formula engraved into the pillar. The chain reaction would lead to the castle's destruction.
ご苦労様。
You served your purpose.
でも、思ってたよりくたびれてたのね。これじゃあ1分持つかどうか。
But it must have been rough. Looks like you're gonna collapse any time now. Plaza in the center of the basement. Aoko tried to steady her breathing, rotating her magical crest at full speed. She waved her arms in blue light, fully aware that she could no longer activate another formula. Her labored breathing refused to settle. She stood at the center of the basement. Without being spotted even once, she had managed to make it all the way to the central pillar. It was a 100-meter dash into the 30-second flat, undoubtedly a new personal best. She spurred on her weakened heart, knowing full well the fate that awaited her.
入れば追ってくる。地下に行けば逃げられない。
Can't help but follow me. And once down here, there'll be no escape.
当然よね。最後まで逃げ回ろうなんて虫のいい話だった。
I should have expected that. It was too much to expect that I could keep up the chase forever. Hindsight was 2020. The castle was only a minute away from collapsing completely. If they stayed, they would both be crushed by the rubble. The puppet certainly did not care. With no life of its own, the sole concern was the elimination of a target, Aoko Aozaki. Indeed, The enemy had been willing to die from the start. She resented her own lack of resolve. It was like her to tuck tail and run from an opponent that didn't fear death.
Vivo insomni, solitare plutorescu inferes. Victius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies. Te obeam.
In slumber I live, in dirt I rot. Day is a day I died and was born. Now I come to you.
そもそも自爆覚悟じゃないあれ。
Always been a suicide mission, huh?
六足歩行とフィンの一撃は使いすぎよ。もう呪詛による魔力補給じゃ間に合わない。
It doesn't have enough juice to power the six-legged form and the fin shots. The curses aren't recharging it fast enough. Such a perpetual motion device was only as good as its ability to regulate its energy consumption. Using many functions at once meant it would burn through the fuel quickly, and losing the ability to process the curses that powered it. It was using up all the functions it had been given to achieve its aim. This was the pride of a tool, and such things could have an ego. Those endowed with sentience could never hope to understand. A beast born to do nothing but run would burn any human who faced its resolve.
ほんともったいない。
It's a waste when you think about it.
こういう無茶をするのは姉貴だけかと思ってたけど、いるところにはいるもんね。
I thought my sister was the only one capable of something this reckless. But I guess I was wrong. She does have a sister. But Aoko did not intend a sacrifice play here. She respected her adversary now, and she was done regretting her choices. There was no time to waste.
行くわよ。ここできっかり。
It is time. This ends now. Aoko had every intention of paying it back double for what has been done to her. The energy Aoko had accumulated exploded out in her right leg. She aimed for a single thing, a head-on attack. The enemy responded with a lethal curse that recharged for her heart like a set of talents, humming with power. It's meant to rend Aoko's heart, burn itself out in the process. As soon as she saw it, Aoko kicked the floor and hit as hard as she could. Her long hair swirled through the air and she flipped aside. This lateral move almost sent her tumbling to the ground, but a quick swing of her arm allowed her to regain her balance. A shot grazed her arm, curse scorching her left shoulder. She did not flinch. Aoko knew she could hold on as long as she continued to avoid a direct fin shot.
スナップ。
Off balance and in pain, it took her half a second to recover. The moment she raised her head, she deflected the attack with a fist full of magic energy.
せーの。
If a puppet had a will of its own, its eyes would have popped right out of its sockets. It would have been floored, shocked at the strong will that allowed this girl to perform a series of moves like this. Aoko's response was instantaneous. While her power was not sufficient to completely redirect the arm's trajectory, it was just enough to deflect its harmlessly past her hair.
Initio eraberamos dom vivimus dolores sunt. Nemo adiuvat, nemo adiuvat, nemo adiuvat.
It was all a mistake. I should have never been born. Atone for me, atone for me, atone for me. The chant became a curse that robbed Aoko of her vitality. Did it still have something left in the tank? Or was it actually Ding Jin? Whatever the reason, Aoko was easily able to resist its weakened defensive maneuver. Into her right leg, pulsing with magical energy, shot up into the puppet's chest from below. It was much lighter than Aoko anticipated. However, she felt little resistance. An automaton's weight was determined by its internals, the size of its power source. Ironically, it was the superiority of its music box engine that would prove to be its downfall.
Venite, venite, venite. Meum sepulchrum, venite.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to my grave. A stuttering curse. Having taken the full brunt of Aoko's kick, the puppet bounced from the ceiling to floor, collapsing in a heap. Its internal construction had been warped by the impact, leaving the drums of the music box that powered the puppet warped as well.
恨むなら設計者を恨みなさい。
Take your design flaws up with the maker.
ダイナモの一つでも積んでいれば、もうちょっとは重たくなったでしょうに。
This single diamond would have been all you needed to. Wait, what? Out of the ceiling came crashing down in front of Aoko, snapping her back to her senses.
ところで今、どうやってぶっ倒したんだろう。
Did I really just take her out? She was so stunned by her own victory that she forgot the House of Mirrors had already begun to collapse.
こっちのがやばかった。
I've gotta get out of here. There was no time to relish in her victory or pity her opponent. Not unless she wanted to meet the same fate. As the situation stood, she found it hard to imagine getting out alive.
急げ、ダッシュだ私。
Get a move on, Aoko. She clapped herself on the cheek to motivate herself anew. As this was her bounty for finishing their battle in a matter of seconds. Her breath ragged with excitement, Aoko ran for the exit. The collapse was intensifying by the second. Having lost its support pillars, the castle was buckling under its own weight.
この邪魔。
Out of my way. Escaping from the basement was proving to be no easy task. While she was taking the shortest route possible through the maze, she was nearly crushed by a falling piece of ceiling along the way. It was the third time she had to deal with the fallen rubble along the way. She destroyed the debris on the stairs with magical bullets as she ran. The automaton jamming had long since worn off. The earlier attack had damaged the vast majority of its functions. was heavy as she ran. Desperation sparked her brain into overdrive. The ceiling seemed to be collapsing in slow motion. Life seemed to flash before her very eyes. Each second stretched into 5. Her frayed nerves made it hard to tell the time. There was debris riddled throughout the stairways, forcing her to crawl up it. She emerged from the destroyed basement into the collapsing first floor. That the plaza was still traversable at all was a miracle itself. And unfortunately for her, the circular path to the exit was still intact.
よし、ついてる。
They made it! The corridor to the entrance was still intact. The basement maze only extended as far as the plaza, so the entrance corridor wouldn't collapse. Only the ceiling would have caved in, leaving the scaffolding surrounding intact. She got herself this far by telling herself repeatedly that fate would decide whether or not she reached the plaza. The gamble paid off. It was her lucky day. All she had to do was muster the last of her strength and keep moving forward until... She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Was it naivety? A sense of responsibility? She pushed aside the image that popped into her head and continued running down the corridor.
言っとくけど、時間合わせの余裕はないわよ。
We don't have the luxury of coordinating the timing with each other to pull this off.
そんな上等な作戦じゃないし、お互いできることをやったら最速で出口に向かいましょう。
It's not the greatest plan in the world, but we both need to do our parts and get to the exit as quickly as possible. It was 5 minutes ago. At the time, Sojuro had nodded with trepidation, and Aoko had not bothered to ask herself why.
何様だったの私。今は走ることだけ考えろ。
What are you spacing out for? Just focus on running. This corridor was giving out too. If she were to look back, she was sure she would see the building collapsing in on her. She was also sure she had no time to waste doing so. The lock was fading as fast as she building structural integrity. It was a small miracle that she had escaped serious injury upon this point, and she could not afford even the slightest slip-up. An ankle sprain, loss of balance, or even a sneeze would be fatal. A simple pat on the back was enough to end it. So, naturally. There it was, clear as day. From the detritus of a stairway, death had arisen. Take her down with it. A corpse that had crawled its way up from the depths of hell itself. It was still operational. And it was still armed with curses. Novo crawled after her, watching as Aoko desperately tried to save herself. The puppet's arm shot forward. Aoko did not turn to meet it. She could see the reflection in the mirror.
E salvatio, e salvatio, e salvatio.
Extend, extend, extend. This time she could not dodge it. There was absolutely nothing she could do. The puppet with her face saying,
Venit domum meum,
I invite you
lut simile somnium,
to die in muddy death.
et pulvere simile quotidianum,
Come as whispering dust.
corprebo,
Gouge out your heart.
te judico.
Death be upon you. For a moment she could not believe her eyes. It was the last thing she'd expected to see.
しつこいぞお前。
Don't know when to give up, do you? A expression adorned the face of a boy who had been waiting in the plaza as he smashed the puppet's outstretched arm. Anger really did not suit him at all. His weapon of choice was a fire extinguisher. He must have searched the maze for something to use as a weapon. No, never mind that. It was too crazy to contemplate. What had he just stayed behind for her? Arco stopped the beach he had sworn would never stop moving and extended a hand out to him.
そんなのほっといていいから早く
That's enough. Leave it. We have to go. Tojuro tossed the fire extinguisher aside and took off running. Pieces of the ceiling continued to collapse like dominoes. They kept moving with dust and dirt following in their wake. Their shadows reached through the collapsing corridor with all their strength. The castle was in the throes of death. With a massive crash and a cloud of dust, the final chapter of a fairy tale that had been Kitsy Land came to an abrupt end. This duel to the death was over. For a moment, amidst the swirling emotions, any past enmity was forgotten. The two collapsed on the lawn and basked in a strange solidarity. The ringing in their ears subsided before long. A tremor of such magnitude seemed impossible in an amusement park like this. As the sounds of destruction echoed across the park, Aoko addressed the individual at her side.
ねえ生きてる
Hey, are you alive?
うん
Yeah.
チェ
Well, the click of her tongue was adorable. The meaning behind it was anything but.
青崎あいつどうなった
Aozaki, what happened to that thing?
見ての通りよ今頃バラバラ死体になってるんじゃない
What do you think? It was crushed to bits. Tojuro sighed, not wholly relieved by her frank response. His reason.
でもそんな心配より自分の心配をした方がいいと思うわよしずきくん
Never mind that thing. You should be worrying about yourself. He wasn't out of the woods yet, after all.
青崎子供の頃はいじめっ子だっただろ
Aozaki, I'm guessing you were a bit of a bully as a kid.
可逆趣味はないって自負してるけど
Maybe, but I don't get a kick out of seeing people suffer.
それで今の自分の立場分かってる
Never mind that. Do you know the situation you're in right now? She sat up and smiled. Tojuro hung his head in shame, wondering why her kind tone and expression were so chilling.
面目次第もございません
Please accept my sincerest apologies.
かしこまってもダメよあの提案には大前提があったわよねこれは取引だってあなたが役に立つのなら見逃してあげるっていう
Oh no, don't you even start. You know what our agreement was. And a deal is a deal. If you held up your end of a bargain, I'd let you go.
分かってるだから面目ないって言ってるだろ
Exactly, and that's why I'm apologizing. Ojiro made a show of avoiding her eyes, like a pouting child. Aoko was taken aback by the sulky display. Perhaps He was angry at himself rather than her. He was not mad because she would not let him go. He was mad that he had not done his part.
は
Naoko sighed for what seemed like a millionth time that day. She could not figure out what surprised her more, his unconditional kindness or her naive approval of it.
じゃあ覚悟はできてるの？
So, are you ready?
そんなのはできないけど、約束だからな。結局は何もしていないし。
Of course not. But a promise is a promise, in the end. I failed to do my part. It was certainly the case that he failed to do any of the things she had expected of him. But just then, she glanced back at the collapsed house of mirrors. What had he done after failing so spectacularly? He had searched for the extinguisher so he could use it as a weapon. And he waited patiently in the plaza as the maze collapsed around him, just because he thought it was wrong to leave her behind. It was a foolish choice, but the exact opposite of her choice to run towards the exit without hesitation.
ま、それでよしとするか。
I suppose I'll take that. She was satisfied, even as she was shocked at how naive she was being. It was true that he had saved her. She smiled inwardly, admiring, if only for a moment, the bravery he continued to show in the face of such extreme circumstances.
役割は果たさなかったけど、アフターケアは合格だし、約束は守らなくちゃね。
You may have blown your chance, but you did make up for it after the fact. I keep my promise. With a nod, she pulled herself to her feet.
約束は、ま、いつか守ってもらうとして。
But you'll pay back this favor someday. The girl tried to keep a straight face as she offered a hand to the boy still lying on the ground.
結果はどうあれ手助けしてもらったし、
You managed to help me in the end.
特別サービスってことで、今夜はもう手を出さないであげる。
So, because of that, I let you off the hook for tonight.
は？
She bashfully averted her gaze. While her profile appeared different than it had been in the past, it was clearly still the face of a vibrant girl he had met the day he first arrived in town.
何を？
What are you staring at? As if she had felt his eyes on her, he shot him a frowning glare.
いや、突拍子もないけど、青崎は律儀だなって。
Oh, sorry. It's just as crazy as it is to say it out. You really are a fair person, Naozaki. He took her outstretched hand, feeling his weight as she pulled him up. He could not help but think that he was about the last person she wanted to hear that from.
ところで、今夜はって言うけど、明日からは？
By the way, you said you would let me off the hook for tonight. What about tomorrow?
さあ、ま、その時になったら考えるわ。
Well, we just have to see. She shrugged her shoulders as if she was not sure herself. The response was so unlike her that it made Sojuro smile. It was the solidarity of having escaped death together, or the fleeting camaraderie that made him do so? It might have been for this night only, but the air between them was kind and gentle. A lot had transpired, but the midwinter nightmare had come to an end. The pair had overcome many trials and tribulations, and could now leave the mirror realm in the wake. But before that,
随分と身勝手ね。
How selfish of you.
それはあなた一人で決めていいことだったかしら、青子。
And who, may I ask, said you could decide that, Aoko? It was the voice of a beautiful songbird and a merciless machine, all rolled into one.
アリス。
Her voice quivered as she spoke their name. The lady in black made her presence known. The night was not yet over. Her name was Alice Kronji. She was a witch whose name struck fear into the hearts of Aoko, an avatar of a night who would allow no witnesses. Holy moly. I'm tuckered out. 3 hours of reading. Holy. Well, we're gonna continue in the next episode. This story picked up in this chapter now with the action and mysteries, more that. Yeah, I'm excited for what's gonna happen next. So, I'm just gonna save, and we are gonna see us in the next episode. Bye bye.